Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be looking at the topographic profile for our Lab 7, which is based on streams. And so here is the map that we are looking at. And right now I am looking at that week 7 lab. And you can see on this left panel here that we have a topographic map and a red line spanning north and south. And this is where we want to build our topographic profile from. But I find it easier to use the grid and profile provided on Canvas. So if you go into your week 7, you will see this file, map and grid for week 7 profile, and that will look like this. And here I have already loaded it into PowerPoint so I can show you how to start this topographic map. But one thing you'll notice is that this is flipped on its side. I did this so that the profile will appear directly under this red line. So if we go back to the original map, we see that the original profile line is north and south, and then in this I flipped it on its side. So now north is to the right and south is to the left. If you need a refresher on how to get this file back into PowerPoint to do this operation, review the videos from week 5 because I go into detail on how to do it there. So I'm just going to go through and do these first few lines with you to get you started on this profile. It might be helpful to go back to week 5 and review the videos on topographic profiles there too, just to get a more in-depth description or explanation on how to do these. Okay, so I'm going to work from left to right and going through and figuring out the elevations of these lines. Now, one thing you will notice is that on this topographic map, this topographic profile, we have a lot more lines and they're packed really closely together, especially in this section. What that is showing is that this is an area with very steep topography. This is a very steep hill going from left to right, and it's going uphill, and then we kind of hit this rim, and then it kind of goes downhill towards the north afterwards. What this means is that it would be really difficult to go through and do every single one of these contour lines. So when you get a situation like this where they're really packed in close together, almost impossible to do, you can use just the index contours, which are these bolded lines, and a lot of them are labeled with the elevations. Once you get to areas where it's really spread out, you don't have many index contours, there I would encourage you to do each and every one of the regular contours as well. But certainly for this southern section down here, we can just do the index contours. Okay, I'm going to start out by zooming in as far as I can because these are pretty tiny. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to find our first index contour, which is this dark brown line right here, and we are interested in the elevation of this point where that index contour line crosses our profile line. And so if we follow this line back up all the way up to here, we can see that the elevation of this line is 6,250 feet. And so what we want to do is click our text box, create a text box right there under the contour line, and we are going to type 6250. And now that is pretty large, so I'm going to go back and make this quite a bit smaller. I'm actually going to go down to 5. Okay, so 6250, and I'm going to place that right there and make this a little smaller so it's more manageable. Now, I'm going to be next looking at this index contour line right here. This is our next line that we want to find the elevation of. But when we follow this around, we do not see that it's labeled, at least not in this section of the map. And so now we have to go back and use this idea of the contour interval. And this is easily found on your topographic maps. If we go to the big map, which is also available on Canvas, this is the full size 8 megabyte map. If we zoom down to the bottom, we can find that the contour interval is 50 feet. So what that means is that every time we make a jump to another contour line, the elevation goes up 50 feet. And so as we go to the north, which is to the right in this map, we are going upslope. And one way we can see that is that this V that is crossing this stream is pointing to the right, and so that is pointing upslope. And so we know, because of the contour interval, that this very next line is 50 feet higher. So this contour line is 6,300 feet. And we can keep going. So this is 6,250, 6,300, 6,350, 6,400, 6,450, and then finally 6,500. And so I am going to label this index contour with 6,500. And instead of making a new text box, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate this one because it's already in the right format. And I'm going to sneak that in right there. And then I'm just going to change this to 6,500. Okay, so now that we've done this, we can safely assume that there is 250 feet between each of the index contours. Some maps will actually label that your index contour interval. And so the elevation change between index contours is 250 feet. So I can go to this next one, and this is the next one, the next index contour that we're interested in, and I know the elevation of this one is 250 feet higher than 6,500 feet, so it's going to be 6,750 feet. And so I'm going to do this process again. I'm going to duplicate and put this right up under there and change this to 6,750. Okay, and let's do one more for the heck of it. Duplicate, and I'm going to put this right where that contour line crosses. And you can see that I'm putting the 6 right at that spot where this index contour line crosses the profile line. And this is going to be 7,000. I've just added 250. Okay, now let's see if we did this right, because this index contour line happens to be labeled, so I am just following that index contour line around, all the way around, and once I get down to this section, 7,000 feet. So that's a good indication that I am on the right track. One thing to look out for is that once you get into this region, at a certain point you're going to be going downhill. You're crossing over that rim, and now downslope is going to be towards the north, which is to the right in this map. Okay, so we've got a couple of those index contour lines labeled. You can see them up there. They're rather small in the scheme of things, but now we want to put those on our grid, which is directly below. One thing to note is that our interval here on the grid is a little bit different than the intervals on the map itself. So I find it easier to actually label these in between so that I know what those elevations are. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a text box. And here, since there's 5 lines in between, I know that this next elevation is, come on now, 6,200. Let's make that a little smaller. So I'm just going to go through and create text boxes for each of these, at least for the bottom section. Okay, and I know that I did it right because the next interval is up to 7,000 feet. Okay, now let's start making our actual profile. Okay, so I'm actually going to make the font a little bit bigger on these because when I zoom out, I see that it's difficult to see on the video. Let's bring this up to 10. Okay. Now that I am set up, I'm going to go to Insert, find my shape. I want my line tool. And I am going to draw a line starting at where the index contour crosses the profile line. And I'm going to drop it straight down, and I want it to stop right at 6,250, which is, that's actually a little high. So let's bring it down, because that would be 6,300. I want it right about there. And so that's at our 6,250 feet. And so I'm going to do the same thing with the next line, except I'm going to drop it down to 6,500. So find my line, start it at the top, right where it crosses. I'm going to come down. Come on. And this one is going to come down right to 6,500. Should be right between those two. Okay. So I'm going to let you do the rest on your own, but you are going to systematically go through one by one, and you're going to drop your lines down, and when you're done, you are going to connect those lines, and it should form a profile of what this elevation or what this topography looks like from the side. Okay, hopefully this is enough to get you started. When you do your lab, of course, you're going to do the entire profile from one end of the arrow to the other. And once you get to this section, where there aren't very many index contours, you'll want to do the regular contour lines as well, since there isn't much data here. As always, if you have any questions, reach out to me and I will do my best to help you any way I can. Good luck and have fun doing your profiles.